is that under the First Amendment, judicial candidates cannot be so restrained that they really can't speak to those types of issues. What they can't do is I can't tell you, well, if this type of case came before me, here's what I would do. That's impermissible. But the First Amendment does allow me to criticize cases that have already been decided. And that was the exact issue that was in that case. The judicial candidate was critical of some Supreme Court cases from Minnesota, and the court said the First Amendment allows him to be. So, having researched that, I went ahead and answered the question in my forthright.
I appreciate that. So, did you know the other judges running, like Tracy?
Tracy Poland?
Yeah, could you judge Karen on that?
I'll let her know. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. You're not the moderator.
Bob?
With 30% of our DWI cases and fatalities in Montgomery County being illegals, what would you do? Is there anything you can do to correct that? And do you believe that we ought to have the ignition interlock for first-time offenders for DWIs?
An ignition interlock? I'm sorry. Okay. Number one, again, the court doesn't do criminal, so I wouldn't be directly responsible for any DWI cases. With that caveat in place, here's what I think. Illegal immigration is huge. It is a huge issue, particularly in Texas, because as you all know, we share a border with Mexico. Judges have an obligation, it is a statutory obligation, to check into the citizenship of any litigant that comes before them, not just criminal defendants, but any litigant that comes before them. And if there's a problem, the call to INS has to happen. So do know that with regard to the illegal immigrant issue, that's something that this court would deal with because it's imperative for every judge to check that out. As for ignition interlock devices, they are a great tool if they're used by honest people, and I guess you can guess what my conclusion is on that. The problem with ignition interlock devices is that anyone who can blow into them. So, if you are intoxicated and you prefer not to blow into your ignition interlock device, for $20 I'm sure you can find somebody who's not intoxicated who will. So it's a good idea, but I think in practice a lot of times it gets abused.
To go further into that though, when that happens, then that becomes a felony
It
charge.
does. It absolutely does. If they get caught, yes it does. And I've seen Kathy Hamilton come down awfully hard on a guy who did the 20-buck trick.
Okay,
So.
time-wise, we need to get a couple quick questions and answers in. Brian?
So, in your court, are you going to have a court-paid interpreter?
No. The county would provide an interpreter in any case where that was actually necessary, but the court would not staff one.
So can you remove that interpreter paid at government expense?
Can I remove them in what way?
Can you say, get out of here?
I
We don't
can't.
pay for it.
If you want to bring your own
that.
interpreter, great. If you don't, okay.
And let me tell you why this court would be uniquely situated to do that. It's kind of a different matter in criminal cases because we have this notion that people need to understand what's being said about them and Sixth Amendment Confrontation Clause and those types of issues. And that's kind of where the interpreter comes into play in criminal cases. I'm not a criminal court. If someone needed an interpreter in my case, that someone better have the money to pay for it. And I will tell you that there are cases that I've handled. There was one in Houston last summer that involved a witness who only spoke Spanish. He was legal, I'm pleased to tell you, but he only spoke Spanish. The court required us to, and I think with good reason, to hire our own interpreter to have him interpret for the jury the testimony that he was given. In a civil case, there's just, you don't have these Sixth Amendment Confrontation Clause issues. If you don't know what someone is saying about you in a civil case, too bad. So it's not something that should go on the taxpayer dollars, and it wouldn't. In my
Another
report.
quick question in.
First of all, I'd like to, I guess, commend you on your completeness on the answers.
Thanks.
I appreciate that. But on number 10, I have a question. It says, do you believe First Amendment prohibits all forms of religious expression? And you said, so long as the government official doesn't do it in an official way. Why not?
Here's what my concern is. If a government official is speaking on religious issues, religious beliefs, theoretic concern, or not theoretic, that was the wrong word, theological concerns, if they are doing it in such a way that everyone around them is expected to subscribe to these views and to participate, I think that's troublesome. And I didn't used to think so. But now, instead of having the National Prayer Day, we are having the National Muslim, what was it called? I don't recall. But
On my count.
Not in our town, but there were other places where that was happening. So my concern is that you shouldn't have a governmental official that is forcing religious views upon you. But I also think it's important for governmental officials to be religious, to have a spirituality, to have a religious faith, and really a Christian belief, in my view. And I think they should express that. I mean, I think those are people who have a nice audience, and that's a wonderful thing for them to express. I just think that the line has to be drawn, that it can't be compulsory to the people that you are serving. So if I'm in court and I decide that we want to open with a prayer, not everybody's going to have to stand up and give the prayer. That's sort of the concept that I was trying to get at.
Okay, and a final question?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a clarification on your answer to question 15 on road versus lane.
Yes, sir.
It almost sounds like your position is that you don't really believe that conception, life starts at conception. You believe that the cutoff should be where the child is viable. I just wanted to
No, sir.
misinterpreting that.
Yes, sir. I mean, my whole idea, I mean, when a woman announces that she is pregnant, you don't say, oh good, you're having a fetus. You don't ask, are you having a human? The question is, are you having a girl or a boy? And that's a question that is asked the moment that a woman finds out that she's pregnant. Is there really any question? We know when life begins. So I didn't intend to imply that.
Okay.
But what I wanted to delve into is the fact that Roe v. Wade makes a lot of medical assumptions about the fact that these children can't really live at this stage, and that's not even true anymore. So even if that was some compelling reason for the opinion, we've moved so far beyond that it no longer stands as such, and that's really what I intended to say. But yeah, life begins at conception. We all know when life begins.
Thank you.
Adrian, can you make it a quick one?
Yeah.
Out there.
Government at all levels usurps other people's authority, other responsibilities. What is the role of the court? Punishment versus reforming people?
Punishment. You know, I hate to be
Nice
that
short
pithy,
answer.
but punishment.
Okay.
I mean, if reformation happens, that's a wonderful thing. But the goal is if someone behaves in a criminal fashion, they don't need to be amongst us anymore.